Coming to paperback and e-readers, E-Steam Cancel Vacation. Hell's aspiring angel takes on a social justice social media mob looking to cancel her in this all-new E-Steam series adventure. Pre-order E-Steam Cancel Vacation on Amazon.com today. One of my viewers wanted me to talk about the DC animated universe. And the DC animated universe is a subject that I'm very passionate about because I grew up with these cartoons back when I was a teenager, and I remember seeing the DC animated universe start back in 1992, and I was there for the whole end of the DC animated universe around 2004. Now, your DC animated universe started in 1992 with Batman the Animated Series, and it ended in 2004 with Justice League Unlimited's final episode, Destroyer. Now, for your DC Comics fans, the DC animated universe is something that is dear to them because it is the finest adaptation of the entire DC universe ever brought to a television screen. And for animators and animation fans, it is a milestone for the medium of animation because this was the first time we saw richer and more complex storytelling brought to television screens in an animated series. Now, to understand the milestones that were established by the DC animated universe, you really have to understand how the medium of comic books and the history of comic books, and you have to understand the history of animation. Now, when it comes down to your DC comic superheroes, they had been adapted before in many TV series like Super Friends and the 1988 Superman animated series or the 1970s Filmation Batman show. And many of those shows featured very light-hearted and simple stories that really, while the characters were there, never really captured the heart of the kind of stories that were being told that were in the comic books. Shows like the Super Friends, the 70s Batman animated series from Filmation, the Superman animated series from Filmation, and series like many other cartoons like the Superpower show, they did not really get, they had the characters on screen, but they really didn't get into the stories that many of the DC Comics fans read in the comics. And that was due to a lot of rules as related to the government, as related to animated series not being too violent, so they never really could get into very rich and complex storytelling like many viewers in Japan were watching back in the 70s and the 80s. Now, back in the 70s and the 80s, your Japanese viewers, they were sitting watching anime featuring lots of complex storytelling and lots of extreme violence, and they were watching things like your Marcross, Dairugga 15, which is Voltron Vehicle Team, Go Lion, which is the Lion Team Voltron, and they were watching other animated cartoons that were having these big sagas, rich complex storylines, multi-dimensional characters, and they were exploring different aspects of characters in each episode of the series. So in Japan, they were doing a completely different thing with hand-drawn animation. Meanwhile, your American animation was just featuring basic, simple stories that were meant to appeal to children. But around the late 80s, American animators were trying to explore richer and more complex stories. Unfortunately, they stumbled out of the gate with things like 1986's Transformers the movie, where they killed most of the characters that latchkey kids grew up with, and because of this failure of Transformers the movie, your companies like Sunbow had a major setback. Same thing with the G.I. Joe movie. They really had a setback as related to telling those more complex stories, but American animators did want to go in that direction, and we saw them taking some steps forward with shows like Real Ghostbusters back in the late 80s. That was one of the first steps towards telling more richer and more complex stories. And while Real Ghostbusters did tell richer and more complex stories, usually all of those stories were usually resolved in the usual animated paradigm of one episode. But your Batman the Animated Series was the first series to really open the door not only for showing us the DC universe, but it also opened the door that allowed an opportunity for us to see more richer and complex storytelling. And it's that richer and more complex storytelling that made your Batman the Animated Series an animated classic, because that storytelling that delved deep into your Batman lore from the comics brought those characters back to life and on screen and took them to another level. Now, your Batman the Animated Series was, again, a revolutionary series, because this series not only borrowed from the DC comics from numerous eras, it also went out here and paid homage to the animation style of the 1930s or 1940s Fleischer Superman cartoons. That's where we got the inspiration for the movement of the characters from animators and writers Paul Dini and Bruce Timm, who designed the animated Batman and designed all of the animated characters. And that richer and more complex storytelling, along with that animation, allowed for the creation of an animated series that practically felt like a real life drama. I mean, some of the Batman animated series stories basically felt like you were watching a Batman show that was a crime drama. That was one of the hallmarks that made Batman the Animated Series so great, was it just felt like something you had never seen on American television as related to cartoons. And one of the reasons why it's a milestone of animation is it showed us how great American animation could be if we took a little time to develop more complex storytelling and allow the animation to just go out here and tell the story. Now, some of the greatest episodes of Batman the Animated Series was the first appearance of Mr. Freeze, called Heart of Ice, and that story was so powerful it practically changed the way we all saw Mr. Freeze. I mean, this story, it just showed how your Mr. Freeze was a tragic figure and how his life was practically shattered as related to this company called GothCorp and his wife Nora. And it's one of the greatest Batman the Animated Series episodes that was ever produced. And your Batman the Animated Series, it just had so many great stories in its 80 episode run. And if I talked about all of them, we would be here all day. But your Batman the Animated Series, it laid the foundation for the DC animated universe, and that foundation was created on several standards. One was very bold and innovative designs. Two was very dynamic animation. And three, the most important one, was very well-crafted stories. Your Batman the Animated Series was a series that went out here and created really great stories that would resonate with viewers, and all of those kids who grew up with Batman the Animated Series can tell you that they can remember an episode and practically recite it from heart, because that's how strong the storytelling was on Batman the Animated Series. And your Batman the Animated Series had to be strong because this series practically laid the foundation for everything we were going to see as related to the DC animated universe. Now, the architects of the Batman the Animated Series, I believe, were Paul Dini, who was the head writer, I think, of Batman, Bruce Timm, who was the animation designer and the art designer, and then I think there was Rick Burchett. He was also another one of the producers. They were the architects of Batman the Animated Series and the foundation of the DC animated universe. And in addition to them, I'm going to talk about the late, great Dwayne McDuffie, who was I believe, the major guy who practically took that foundation to another level, because with his knowledge of the DC universe, he was the one who enabled us to see the entire DC universe come to life on screen when he came into DC's animated division around 2000. Now, after the building of the foundation with Batman the Animated Series, your Warner Brothers and Fox decided to end their partnership around 1996 or so, because Batman the Animated Series ran from 92, and then they came out with Batman and Robin in 94, and by about 95, your Fox and your Warner Brothers were having issues, and Warner Brothers was starting its new television netlet, the WB. And as it started its netlet, the WB, they created a platform called WB Kids, and they wanted to go out here and launch that platform strong with a Superman animated series. So while they were still running episodes of Batman and Robin on your Fox to run out their contract, they were coming up with a plan to develop a new Batman show to run alongside Superman the Animated Series. Now, Superman the Animated Series, I believe, started in about, I think it was 96 or so, late 96, September of 96. I have to check that out, so 1 second. But so yeah, it was September of 96, because I remember I was working at Food Emporium at the time. And yes, I was taping those episodes as I was trying to work. So I had the VHS tapes of all of those episodes. So it was September of 96, Superman the Animated Series started. And Superman the Animated Series was a contrast to Batman the Animated Series. Now, your Batman the Animated Series had these very 30s noir-styled dark designs, and it used a lot of red and blacks as related to backgrounds when they were filming. But Superman, in contrast, was a much brighter series. Now, many people really don't like Superman, the animated series, too much because they think that the storytelling's a little hokey. But the storytelling was very true to the Superman character, and there are some memorable episodes like My Girl, which featured Lana Lang, and the season 2 episodes practically were the breakout for the series, which people thought was a little bland, but season 2 really takes it to another level with the introduction of Darkseid in Father's Day, and the episode where Dan Turpin winds up losing his life. These darker stories featuring Superman really start to show the heart of Earth's greatest hero and show why Superman is important to the world. Now, one of my favorite episodes of Superman, the animated series, was this episode, final episode, Legacy. Now, the final episode, Legacy, as I consider it, is one of those animated masterpieces, because this episode really shows why Superman is a hero. And it's in that episode where we see the true character of the Man of Steel, because in that final episode, we really see in this confrontation between Superman and Darkseid, in the final confrontation, what really makes Superman a hero. And we really start to see, because your Darkseid really tests Superman's character. And I don't want to spoil that episode, because that episode is an absolute masterpiece of animation. I mean, everything about it, the storytelling, the dynamic movements of the animation, everything in that one episode is so powerful. That last episode, Legacy Part 2, I mean, you have to see and experience this episode, because this one, it just took the Superman character and it makes you really think about, you know, where Superman could go if things really went wrong in his life, and his own resolve and perseverance that enable him to continue to go on after what Darkseid has done to him. So this Superman animated series, it really had, again, really bright animation, really lively pictures. I mean, everything about it is very well done. And your Superman the animated series, a lot of people, they don't like the first couple of episodes, but those first couple of episodes do lay a solid foundation to who Superman is, and they really work very well until you get to season 2, where things really take off. Now, some things I really liked about Superman the animated series was the presentation of Lois Lane, and I really liked the way they handled Lana Lang, and I also really loved the way they did Darkseid. Again, very well crafted storytelling in Superman the Animated Series. So that was the second part of building the DC animated universe, because Superman was the contrast to Batman, but we also, as your Superman animated series was going on, we had a new Batman animated series, and they usually ran together, and they called it the Batman Superman Adventures. Now, this series usually came on I think from 98 to about 2000. I remember watching the Batman Superman Adventures, and I remember taping all the episodes, and it usually was an hour of one Superman episode and one Batman episode, and this laid the foundation for the whole DC animated universe, because it connected both cartoons together, and it connected both cartoons together and allowed for the real building of the DC animated universe, because we got the Flash, who made an appearance in a Superman episode with Weather Wizard, and then we got the true connection to the DC animated universe with the episode called World's Finest. Now, World's Finest pays homage to the DC comic book series World's Finest, where Batman and Superman would team up, and in this one, Lex Luthor and the Joker come together to try to destroy Superman, and Batman has to try to stop him, and this is the first meeting between Batman and Superman, and this is where your Superman learns Bruce Wayne's identity, and your Bruce Wayne gets involved with Lois Lane. So The World's Finest was a 90-minute movie called the Batman Superman movie on some DVDs, but it was a 3-part episode that was broke up, but it came on as a 90-minute special on one Saturday morning, and I taped that. I had the tape, but when I moved, I wound up losing all my VHS tapes. So I remember taping that episode, and it is an absolute masterpiece, and it is one of the cornerstones of the DC universe. Now, as the DC universe went on with Superman and Batman the animated series, we also got a brand new Batman series called Batman Beyond. Now, Batman Beyond came out in 1999, and I remember taping the premiere episode, Rebirth, on Sunday night at 7 p.m. when it came on. And this episode, most people, they didn't really like Batman Beyond when it came out, because they thought, oh, it's going to be old man Batman, and they didn't really like Terry McGinnis in the beginning. But as I watched the episode, I was really impressed with the animation, because it was really dynamic. And this Batman Beyond series was one where Paul Dini and Bruce Timm were not really restrained by the DC department as related to creation, so they could really get innovative with the designs. And that was one of the things that made me a big Batman Beyond fan. And the other thing was the whole first 5 minutes of the first episode. Now, the first 5 minutes of that first episode of Batman Beyond show you the old Bruce Wayne. And one of the things I liked about that episode with the storytelling was it practically gave a great end to Bruce's story. Now, Bruce's story started with a gun, and it ended with a gun. And I like that, because it really showed that the writers were really paying attention to Bruce's story. And this ended his story arc as Batman, because what motivated him to become Batman was related to a gun, and what led to him stop being Batman ended with a gun. It was a brilliant piece of storytelling that really delved into Bruce's psychological profile, and it was just an extremely well done aspect of the whole Batman mythology. And then we transitioned into Terry McGinnis, which gave us a more slender, more agile Batman with a different approach to crime fighting. And Batman Beyond, a lot of people, they didn't like the first 2 episodes, but I liked them. I thought they were fine. The Terrific 3 was like a homage to Fantastic Four, and the whole thing is the series really didn't kick off until that 4th episode with Mr. Freeze. And Mr. Freeze, just like he was in that episode Heart of Ice, it took Batman the Animated Series to the next level, and your episode Meltdown, which is in contrast, took Batman Beyond to the next level, because that's when everybody became a fan of Batman Beyond. Now, your Batman Beyond, really, this series was one where the creators really could get out here and get really creative because it was a future world, and they could really go out here and get crazy with the designs. And I saw homages to Jack Kirby, I saw homages to Akira, I saw homages to lots of different aspects of animation from Japan and animation from America and comic books. And that was one of the most fantastic things about that part of the DC animated universe, was you got to really see the creators really go into different styles of animation, different storytelling aspects, and keep it fluid with the same Tim style designs, but they could go out here and explore different things and explore different different parts of storytelling, things like cyberpunk, which is a major part of Batman Beyond. And they could go out here and explore all types of different kinds of storytelling, from mystery to noir, and they could go out here and really take things into another whole aspect of storytelling. So from an animator's perspective, Batman Beyond was like a dream. I mean, if you're an animator, that whole series was, you could just do all sorts of different things with DC Comics characters. But one of the things that made Batman Beyond so great was, while they were exploring all of these different aspects of these characters, they were still staying true to the heart of those characters. I mean, this series, while it was the future of Batman, it stayed true to the heart of Bruce Wayne and his mission of ensuring that nobody suffers like he did. And that's one of the cores of why so many people love Batman Beyond, because it showed that we could go to another level as related to animation, but we could still stay true to the heart of storytelling. Now, as your Batman Beyond was going on, and we also had your Paul Dini, Bruce Timm, and Rick Burchett, or Alan Burchett, I don't know what his name is, but they were coming up with a new series called Justice League, and this series debuted in 2001. Now, your Justice League was a new series that was going to feature the heroes of the DC universe. Now, we had already seen Flash, we had seen Orion in Superman the Animated Series, we had seen Zatanna in Justice League, and we had seen many of the new guys in Superman the Animated Series and Batman Beyond. So we wanted to see something in between, where we saw the Justice League form, and Justice League was where we saw things really start to come alive for the DC, as related to the DC universe, because we started to see a richer picture of the DC universe. Now this is where Dwayne McDuffie had come in, and your Dwayne McDuffie, while he was working on Justice League, was also working on his own animated series, Static Shock. So this is why we got the link between Justice League and Static Shock, because Dwayne McDuffie had come in. And Dwayne McDuffie, the late great Dwayne McDuffie, one of the reasons why he is so great is because your Dwayne McDuffie was the architect of the entire DC universe coming to life on screen. Now, in Batman the Animated Series and Superman the Animated Series, we saw the corners of the DC universe related to Batman and Superman, but when it came down to the entire DC universe, that's where Justice League and Justice League Unlimited really gave us that rich picture of the entire DC universe. And we wouldn't have gotten that if it wasn't for Dwayne McDuffie's brilliant storytelling and his extensive knowledge of the DC universe. Now, your Dwayne McDuffie, he practically brought the DC universe to life on screen because of his extensive knowledge of the DC universe. And thanks to him, we were able to see obscure characters come to life on screen in episodes of Justice League and Justice League Unlimited, and we were able to see these characters very true to who they are. Now, the Justice League series laid the foundation for that larger DC universe, and just like Superman, the first season, a lot of people didn't think it was that great until the finale with Savage Time, where we saw all the heroes come together. And Justice League really did not starting to really take off until season 2, and season 2 was a banger of a season, starting with Darkseid and Brainiac, and then ending with your Hawk Girl in Starcross being revealed to be a spy. I don't want to spoil too many of these episodes because there are people who have still not seen them, but I really want people to go out and see them and see what's so great about this series, because the final battles in Starcrossed are epic, and you don't want to miss them, because again, the animation is so dynamic and the storytelling is so great. You'll practically wear out a series of DVDs or a couple of VHSs watching them. Now, after Justice League, in the aftermath of Starcrossed, we saw the formation of Justice League Unlimited, and one of the greatest storylines to ever grace a animated platform, the Cadmus Story Arc. Now, the Cadmus Story Arc is one where the government and people like Amanda Waller are afraid of the superheroes getting too much power, and this leads to a major power struggle between the heroes and Cadmus, and this one has been building for years. I mean, this has been building ever since Batman the Animated Series, with the bull-headed professor who was doing genetics, Professor Hamilton, who had his confrontation with Superman in Legacy, and many others who had been dealing with issues as related to superheroes. So there's a huge payoff as related to many smaller storylines, and it sets up bigger storylines, which is a major aspect of screenwriting. You have to have endings and beginnings, and from many of the endings of Batman the Animated Series, Superman the Animated Series, Justice League, all of that comes to a head in Justice League Unlimited to begin the Cadmus Story Arc. And the Cadmus Story Arc is one of the greatest storylines in American animation, because this saga is on the level, as I believe, of a Marcross, a Die Ruger 15, or a Go Lion in aspects of storytelling. And it's one of the first times we start to see long-form storytelling presented in American animation, because in American animation before that, everything in the 80s, I remember in the 80s, was everything ended in one episode, but this was the first time we really started to see true long-form storytelling like many in the Japanese anime community used to get, because that was one of the other hallmarks of DC's animated universe, was we got that long-form storytelling that our Japanese counterparts used to get all the time, but this is the first time we got it in Justice League Unlimited, and it tied all of these series together beautifully, and it led to the ultimate climax of the whole Cadmus Story Arc, which is that final episode. And in that episode, we really see these heroes, especially the Flash, come into their own. Now, this Justice League Unlimited, again, it would not have been as great as it was if it wasn't for Dwayne McDuffie and his extensive knowledge. I mean, he was practically like the late Mark Grunwald, an encyclopedia of DC history, and he brought that DC history to life in that first season of Justice League Unlimited. And that first season, again, is a masterpiece of hand-drawn animation. Now, the second season of Justice League Unlimited deals with the aftermath of the Cadmus Story Arc, and this is where Lex Luthor is still trying to come back from his great defeat, and that great defeat leads to him going on a quest for Brainiac, and that quest for Brainiac leads to him building things towards the final battle, which leads to a major climax with the return of Darkseid. Now, the return of Darkseid, again, this is more long-form storytelling, and this long-form storytelling is, I say, about 5-6 years in the making, and it brings up about 4 or 5 years of stories, and it pays off big with the return of Darkseid in one of the most powerful episodes, Destroyer. Now, Destroyer is the finale to your Justice League Unlimited, and this finale, you just have to watch that last 5 minutes, because that last 5 minutes, that's where Superman really comes into his own once again, and we really see again, one of the greatest epic battles. And we also see Lex Luthor stealing the win from the heroes. I don't want to give away too much because that episode, it's just so powerful. But the DC animated universe's unofficial end, it doesn't come in Justice League Unlimited, which ends in season 2 with the heroes going to fight another day. No, the real ending of the whole DC animated universe comes in Justice League Unlimited's first season final episode called Epilogue. Now, Epilogue, again, is a brilliant episode, and it takes us into a future Terry McGinnis, who finds out some things about his how he came to life. So that's an episode that, again, you have to really watch. But that episode, it's another hallmark of American animation, and I could really see aspects of it coming from the Japanese animation from some perspectives as related to storytelling, because a lot of that series, a lot of that episode, really, a lot of it reminded me so much of a lot of Japanese anime. But a lot of the storytelling there, the mystery behind how Terry McGinnis came into this world, it's very, the way it's done, it's just very fascinating. And that episode, it is the end of the DC animated universe, and it's a period that will leave you with a satisfying ending, and it just leads to a possible future beginning. But the DC animated universe, it is a major milestone of American animation. It's a major milestone as related to the DC universe because it is what I call the finest adaptation of the DC universe ever created. It is an adaptation where we see all of these characters come to life, staying true to who they are, true to their voices, true to their stories, and that is why it is one of the most respected adaptations of the DC universe, and it is one that most viewers who have watched it have become, fans of. I'm sorry for burping, I just have gas, but the whole thing is people love the DC animated universe like I do because it basically is comic books come to life, and even though it's adaptation, you are seeing these characters as who they truly are. And that is one of the things that that many companies don't really do with adaptations, stay true to the source material, or even go into obscure parts of the source material. But that's why people love the DC animated universe. And those kids who grew up with the DC animated universe, they grew up with a treat. Now, there are other aspects of it with like Static Shock, because Static Shock was a part of DC animated universe, and I forgot to talk about them, but that Static Shock also was a part of it, and Static Shock was the part that showed us the milestone aspect of the DC universe, and it also allowed for the merger of Milestone and DC. And while it lasted 4 seasons, we got to see Static teaming up with Superman, Green Lantern, and the Justice League, and it really, again, showed us how all of the aspects of the DC universe really came together. So the DC animated universe is a major part of American animation, and it is a major part of American animation history because, again, this is the first time we saw not the entire DC universe from comic books brought to life on screen and done true to the material. And it is also, we saw some of the most dynamic and fluid animation that we've ever seen in years used on a television series, because oftentimes companies, when they do animated series, they do them on the cheap, but no expense was really spared for your DC animated universe. So that was another major milestone, along with that richer and more complex storytelling. And I wish that we would continue to move things forward with hand-drawn animation like we saw with the DC animated universe, because if we really kept pushing with hand-drawn animation, we could have been on the level of Japanese animation. Unfortunately, in the late 2010s, we have taken a major step back with stuff like your Steven Universe, but I would like to see animation get back to this level of creativity, storytelling get back to this level of complexity, where we have a show geared for kids that featured irony and foreshadowing and really more higher level storytelling aspects, and get back to that type of depth, layer, and complexity as related to storytelling. Because your DC animated universe, I mean, there's never been anything like it. I mean, live action tries to be like it, but it's nothing ever been like this. Nothing has ever given us this level of storytelling. And the viewer who wanted me to talk about this, I mean, you're bringing back about a lot of memories, because I was there watching many of these episodes on TV, and I was taping many of these episodes as they came on. And as VCRs became obsolete and we moved over to DVD, I was out here trying to buy all of these episodes, and I have all these episodes on DVD. I'm hoping to finally get the Static Shock series on DVD soon, so that I can have the completed DC animated universe and enjoy it for years to come. Because the DC animated universe is something you definitely want to watch, and it's definitely something I would highly recommend you check out if you're a DC Comics fan, because you see the real DC universe, and if you're an animation fan, you're going to really enjoy all of the bold and dynamic animation that is presented here, the different approaches to hand-drawn animation, and if you're a screenwriter like me, you're really going to enjoy the storytelling that's done here. Because one of the things that helped me to become a good writer was watching shows like Batman the Animated Series, Superman the Animated Series, and definitely Batman Beyond, where I draw a lot of inspiration and influence for my storytelling model. You're going to learn a lot about writing from these series, and they're going to really help you to really learn the craft of storytelling, because the storytelling is just so well done here. You're gonna love everything about the DC animated universe. So I really enjoyed making this video for the viewer, and I'm hoping that this gives you a better understanding of why the DC animated universe is so great and means so much to so many people. Now, if you want to request a video like this viewer did, you can donate to the Patreon or the PayPal or the Cash App, and if I know something about that subject, I will make that video for you. And if you want to pick up some of my action-packed fantasy fiction on the SJS Direct imprint, like the ISIS series, the E-Steam series, the John Haynes series, and the books of the Spinsterella trilogy, you can find those books on Amazon.com in paperback and Kindle format. You can also find them on Smashwords, the iBookstore, and Google Play. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe. Now available in paperback and e-readers, E-Steam Blast from the Past. Hell's aspiring angel takes on her demonic doppelganger in this action-packed, time-traveling E-Steam series adventure. Get E-Steam Blast from the Past with a bonus E-Steam comic book, No Good Deed, in paperback and e-readers at online booksellers everywhere.